As I'm sure you've heard me mention in class, our next major topic is going to be React, which is a framework for building single-page apps. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of React, I want to take a few minutes to put React and single-page apps in context. Perhaps the best way to explain what a single-page app is to contrast it with a multi-page app. So when you look at websites today, they largely fall into two categories: multi-page apps and single-page apps. Multi-page apps are what we've been doing all along and are built with tools like Express, Ruby on Rails, Flask, and so on. And a single-page app is something built with things like React, Angular, Vue, and so on. So a multi-page app is a web app where each view, each different screen layout, is generated by the server. So every time you look at a different page, you are going back to the server, and the server is sending you a different page. And this is what's happening with Express. Your different EJS files, every time you go from the index to the show or to the new, you go back to the server loads that EJS file, renders the template, generates some HTML, and sends it back. And as I just mentioned, there's a number of multiple page app stacks. We've been using Express. Some of you have been using Flask or some of the .NET frameworks. You've probably heard of Django and Spring. The list goes on and on. In contrast, a single page app is a website where there's only one page. You load one HTML page, and anything that changes on that page, any of the user interface interactions, are all done on in the web browser itself using JavaScript. So you get one page, and if it looks like you're going to another page, you're really just using JavaScript to change what's displayed on that page. Any communication back with the server is not to get another web page, but just to get data to display on the page, ticket prices or seat availability, or whatever your app is. Now, if generating web pages inside the browser itself sounds complicated, well, to some extent it is a little bit. So why would we deal with that? Well, the main reason is when you do that, when you do most of that work in the browser, you get better performance. It feels more like a program that's running right on your laptop or your computer than a traditional web page. Right? In the end, it all comes down to speed or getting rid of that latency. There's also another key benefit, and that is that you can reuse your backend with mobile apps. So just to be clear, when you write a single page app, you still need a server. You need the server to provide the data. If you're using like a single page travel website, you still need a source for the available flights and the tickets and all of that. But that server is only providing data. So if you want to have a system where you have an app in a browser and you also have an iOS app and an Android app, those apps are just providing different views to the same data, so you can reuse that back end. And it's much easier to do that than if you write like a full-fledged Express or Rails app and then want to make a mobile version. You end up rewriting a lot of your back end. So like I mentioned, React is only one of many frameworks for single-page apps, perhaps the most popular right now. Angular is also popular, but I think its use is diminishing. Meteor and Ember are out there. I haven't had a chance to work with those, and not on this list, but increasing in popularity, is something called Vue. So as we go on to the next apps and we start digging into the nuts and bolts of React, and you're struggling with that initial learning curve that comes with just about every framework, keep this big picture in mind, and keep in mind the benefits you get out of the time you invest into a single page app, especially in terms of performance and reusability of the back end.